Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Kranton and I'm a professor in the economics department at Duke. So let me tell you how I became interested in economics. When I first started as an undergraduate, I really wanted to understand the economic and political crises of my time, in particular the Iranian hostage crisis and the oil embargo. And I started out as an international relations major. And economics was required for that major. I had to take introduction to micro and introductory macro, which I didn't find them particularly exciting classes, to be really honest. But then I had to take international trade as part of the major. And at some point I realized that in order to do well in that class, I really had to dig in and study the material. So I got myself a red pen. I can't remember exactly why the red pen, other than that I thought if I was working through everything in a red pen, it was going to help me stay awake while I was in the library working through all that material. And as I was working through the graphs, I just was struck by how incredibly interesting it was to be able to represent something like capital-intensive production or labor-intensive production through these curves on the graphs, and how that might help explain trade patterns. And so through that class, I really got hooked into the whole method of economics, the way in which we can use these mathematics and the equations and the graphs that represent the mathematics to understand how people interact with one another. Then I went on and I switched my major. Switching majors is fine. I switched my major from international relations to economics. And one of my favorite classes in college was intermediate micro, so the equivalent of Econ 205 at Duke, which I teach. So what did I love about that class, again, was that I was able to use the tools that I learned in that class. I was able to understand better the things I read about every day in the newspaper, such as, for example, antitrust policy and the why AT&T, which had been the single, if one can imagine a world with a single telecommunications provider, why that there was an antitrust suit and AT&T was broken up into smaller pieces. And so I continued to study economics as in my PhD, but along the way there was a bit of I wouldn't say a detour, but more of a path that then actually fed back into my work as an economist. I went off as an undergraduate and I went to Egypt because I had, as an undergraduate, been also studying Middle East studies and Arabic. And in Egypt, I was working with NGOs and with small-scale producers. And I made my way to the Woodrow Wilson School and for a master's in public policy. And in the Woodrow Wilson School, I again was studying economics. And I just thought I've really just got to continue with this economics, because economics is what's helping me understand what was going on with those farmers that I was working with in the Nile Delta. And so I went to Berkeley. I applied to Berkeley and did my PhD at Berkeley. And in my research in economics, what I've been mostly focusing on is how to expand our understanding of how people and firms make decisions. So you might learn in an economics class, and even in Econ 205, about an individual consumer going to the market and choosing between apples and oranges, or an individual firm making some choice over hiring workers or hiring more capital. And my research has been, the efforts of my research have been towards making that consumer and making that firm manager a more robust figure. That consumer is embedded in social networks, so is that firm manager. And so their decisions about who to hire and who to fire and what technologies to adopt very much depends on the information they have, which also, of course, depends on who they know and the opportunities that they may have had to meet different people and interact with different people. And the people's choices at the supermarket very much depend on how they understand who they are within a society, if they understand that certain purchases are appropriate or inappropriate, and so on, and for themselves and how they want to live their lives. So, of course, I think that is a really ripe area for continued research, is to understand how social networks and social identities shape basically everything we do. Thanks. In economics. Thanks.